Roundabouts. So the layouts are there for roundabouts, but there's also a short description about how it's safe to install these roundabout sections. Okay, so I'm going to talk now just on the last piece of the presentation about our observations from the temporary traffic management design course, which we've rolled out over the past 18 months. But why did it come about first of all? Well, if you read even the old version of the guidance document, it states no specific training course which somebody must go on to be deemed competent. It states that a traffic management designer is competent by a combination of knowledge, training and experience. Previous to 18 months ago, there was no other training course available except the operatives course, which was a signing light and guarding course, which tells you how to do stop-go and it tells you how to be safe on site. It doesn't describe to you how you plan roll-ups, how you carry out site visits, how you design temporary traffic management. So, the LGMSB, the NRA and the Department of Transport all got together and procured a course to be delivered and rolled out across the country for temporary traffic management design. And I see Steve Archer down there, down the back. Myself and Steve primarily, I have to admit, was involved in the majority of the authorship on this course. I assisted him on it. And we've been very privileged now to deliver this course to over 900 representatives and local authorities across Ireland over the past 18 months. It's given us a great insight into what's taking place within the industry, and that's what I'd like to share with you now over the next few minutes. One of the main problems for local authorities is the confusion of their role, especially as PSDP. And Steve would vouch for me in delivery of this course. You could spend a half day on this whole course talking about the responsibilities of designers and what designs are supposed to be provided at different stages throughout the course or throughout a construction project. Preliminary and construction stage plans, so they're confused. Are we supposed to provide the finished traffic management plans to contractors? Do we provide anything at all? And to what level of detail we should be providing? What's the responsibility of the PSDP? What am I liable for if I don't provide enough detail at preliminary stage? And then along with that, you have to take into account that a local authority wears various hats within a construction project. They might be the road authority, there might be the client, or they probably will be the client, there might be the PSDP, there might be the PSCS, there could be the contractor, there could be the designer. It could be all of these roles, and then other roles or other jobs, they'll subcontract a lot of this out. So I would say cut them a bit of slack. They are getting up to speed with what they're supposed to be doing. It will take time, but we're hoping, and we have seen a big improvement in the level of detail provided by county councils. Another problem arises that we've been told about the appointment of external consultant engineers when they take on the role of temporary traffic management designers and the PSDP. I'll be controversial in saying this, but a lot of external consultant engineers wouldn't know Chapter 8 if it hit them in the face. And that's creating a lot of problems within the industry, because they're not putting it into preliminary health and safety plans, and they're not recording it and requesting it as a specific item in tender documentation, which means it's totally overlooked until you go and look for your road opening license when it's too late. So the industry of consultant engineers need to really bring up the standard of the details that they're providing at preliminary stage within their documents. But you have to take into account as well, when you're dealing with local authorities, that they're taking on board all these new changes in the context of an economic climate which is giving them totally contradictory resources. They're trying to do all these plans and all these health and safety requirements, and they're losing staff, they're hemorrhaging staff. There's a recruitment ban, and they're losing any of the temporary people who are on the contracts or on temporary contracts looking after temporary traffic management. Contractor compliance issues along with that. A lot of local authorities would say that we're receiving great documents from contractors, but when it comes to the site works, they don't care. They're not doing it on site. So that is one of their issues which they have, just so you're all aware of. In terms of contractors then, because we've also rolled out this course to the private sector, so we've listened to what they're saying. Just like the local authorities, they're also having to take on board all these new health and safety requirements in the context of an economic climate in which rates have been cut up to 50% probably in the space of 2 to 3 years. And there's the expectation still on them to put all these health and safety measures and still do it at a cheaper cost. Very, very difficult to do. I would have other contractors who would come up to us and say that when they're tendering for projects, they know the measures that should be put in place in terms of temporary traffic management. But if they put in a price for it, they simply won't win the contracts, because the people who are looking at the contract price when they come in are turning a blind eye to health and safety and turning a blind eye to the actual cost and measures which are required in terms of temporary traffic management. Another controversial point: every single local authority has a different system for applying for roadworks. They have different documents that they send out, they have different documents that they request, and it's an absolute frustration point for contractors that they'll travel 5 miles down the road and have to deal with a totally different set of systems. In fairness to the LGMSB, which is the Local Government Management Services Board, they're attempting to standardise the systems that the local authorities use, and the guidance document is one such measure. So another shameless plug that I'm going to have: we have a temporary traffic management design programme on our stand, which I would invite some of you to come along and have a play with, which again is a prototype for standardising the documentation and the plans which local authorities can use, but also contractors. So what's coming down the line of us? 2011, we're expecting the introduction and the procurement of a new high-speed temporary traffic management course for operatives. Anybody working on a motorway or dual carriageway in the future will have to be trained, not just a classroom training exercise. They will be brought through a practical on site, and then they will be assessed on site. And it's a much more labour intensive and time intensive course than the signing, night and guarding course. Why? Because I'll tell you, if you're carrying if you're working on a high speed road and you're carrying a sign across the road, it's a lot different than doing it in a housing estate. So therefore the training needs to be much more intensive. For also any amendments to Chapter 8, we have been told, just so you're aware, will be made on a page-by-page basis. So we will not have to wait for a whole new document to be re-released and published. They will publish a page-by-page document. So just to sum up the presentation, we have a new guidance document. The HSA have backed it, has a much greater emphasis on temporary traffic management design and the responsibilities, and describes in much more detail what you as a local authority or a PSDB should be providing, and what you as a contractor should be expecting from your PSDB. The sign, night and guarding course is also updated. Just so you're aware, anybody who has attended the existing traffic or sign, night and guarding course, your course is still relevant. It still applies. However, there are changes which you should make your operators aware of if they have already taken the course. And just to finish off, I described at the start where temporary traffic management has come from in the past few years. A lot of people resist the changes. Like any changes, people don't like change, especially when it costs them in their pocket. But we have to face up to these changes, because at the end of the day, this man here has a right to go home safely after work. This man here has a right to go home safely after work. And so too does the road worker, regardless of cost. So the guy who's holding the stop-go board, regardless of whether he's a general operative or that graduate engineer holding the stop-go board, everybody has the same right. So thank you very much for your time. I'll take any questions at the end. The gentleman at the back here has asked, what provision have they made for cyclists within temporary traffic management? So I'd just like to flick back to a slide here. Regardless of whether they're providing it, there's now a recommendation for what they should be providing within this document. So you'll notice that the clearances here take into account the widths required for cyclists. Within this document as well here, it shows diagrams of the widths cross-section wise that should be provided and signage for cyclists, especially where the road looks is blocked. The gentleman has said that a lot of times when roadworks take place that there are ramps on the road, so some contractors need to plane out and then leave maybe a 100mm step on the road where it's not safe for a cyclist to travel over. So what a lot of contractors do is that they divert the cyclists onto the footpath, which is not a safe provision. Regardless of what they determine is a safe method, they must take into account the needs of cyclists in their traffic management design. So anybody who's involved in managing that roadworks should have a designer in place who takes into account the needs of the cyclists and pedestrians. If that's not adequately provided for, they are not fulfilling their role of PSCS or a designer. Gary has brought up, and it's one of the confusion points of the Silent Night and Guarding course. The Silent Night and Guarding course allows operatives to design Type C roadworks, which is routine works. It also allows them to implement Type A works and Type B works. So it provides them with the competence to put it on site. It doesn't allow them to design it. Type A works and Type B works must still be designed by a separate traffic management designer. Exactly. It still must be prepared by a competent designer. If anyone has any particular questions, I'll be at the stand or 50 in the next few minutes. And thanks again for your attention.